Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be taking a look at a lot of the new Bystial slash branded slash Icejade, Albaz, fucking 10,000 intertwined archetypes lore support in Cyberstorm Access. And if you missed yesterday's video covering some of them from earlier reveals, you can check that video out in the description below. And if you did not, then great, thanks for watching and supporting. But that being said, there are plenty of new cards to talk about as I'm trying to play catch up. Let's jump into the video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today as we take a look at the new branded cards. If you guys do enjoy the video and want to stick around, please hit the like button and subscribe. Click the bell icon if you want to stay notified whenever new videos are posted. Typically try to post frequently. It's been a little bit up and down, but we're working on it, doing the best that we can. So hopefully you guys will bear with us. Now, let's get into the actual cards because that's why people are here. Starting off with the Bystial Aluber. This, of course, is another variant of Aluber, and it is very, very interesting from an artwork perspective. A level 4 Dark Dragon Tuner, and it says this card's name becomes Fallen of Albaz while on the field or in the graveyard. If this card is normal or special summon, you can discard a card, then target one dragon monster your opponent controls or that is in their grave, and activate the following effect. Either send this card to the graveyard, and if you do, take control of that monster on the field, or send this card to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon that monster from the graveyard to your field. You can only use each effect of the Bystial Aluber once per turn. So I don't know what this means. Did Aluber win? Is that what this is saying? I don't know. I don't follow the lore as much as some people might, so perhaps he did, perhaps he didn't, perhaps it's a bait and switch. I don't know. But it is a Bystial. It does count as Fallen of Albaz, and it does have some really cool effects. Dragons are obviously very potent in the metagame to an extent. Maybe not in the best deck like Tearlaments, but it's definitely something that sees a lot of play. And as Despia and Branded continue to get more support and people gravitate back towards the deck, this card just gains more intrigue and potential for sure. And like I said in yesterday's video, you are seeing the Bystials and everything, so there's almost always going to be some level of dragons that are seeing play. Which makes it somewhat decent. That discard can actually be beneficial to an extent. Unfortunately, it is a cost, not an effect, so it doesn't trigger some of the brandeds, at least based on the way I'm reading this, because it says you can discard a card, then target a dragon monster to activate this effect, so I think it would be a cost. If it's not a cost, it's a lot better, because it would also trigger some of your other branded cards, and obviously synergize with them better. And it's a tuner, so it does have that going for it. We've seen some of the new, we saw the new Bystial Synchro, we saw the new Despia Synchro. Who knows whether or not there's more of that, on the horizon. But overall, it's pretty cool. It's another neat piece of lore. It's obviously not as good as Aluber himself, but it's neat, and it's definitely one that people have their eyes on. I think the, ability to take control of something is going to really depend on what dragons are very significant, but there's a lot to look for here, and the fact that it does become Fallen of Albaz more or less gives you an alternative to playing Albaz and still being able to, resolve a lot of these fusions. So Bystial Aluber is solid. I'm not 100% sure, based on that verbiage, whether or not it is a cost or effect for that discard, which I do think would change some elements of the effect. Next up, we've got Guiding Quem the Virtuous. This is, of course, another Ecclesia variant. I talked about this card very briefly yesterday, as it is a target that can be summoned off of the new Despia Synchro, but as a whole, this card seems neat. So let's read the effect together. It is a light level 4 Spellcaster Tuner, and it says this card is always treated as a Dogmatica and Despia card. If this card is normal or special summon, you can send one Fallen of Albaz or one card that mentions it from your deck to the graveyard. If a card or cards leaves the extra deck, you can target one Fallen of Albaz or one monster that mentions it in your graveyard, except Guiding Quem the Virtuous, special summon it. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. So there's a lot of really neat things to unpack here. For one, the fact that it's treated as a Dogmatica and a Despia card at all times means it really does give itself various places to be played. Dogmatica has another solid opening play or another solid thing to fetch off of Nadir Servant, while also being able to get access to some of your other cards. And as we know, there is a large card pool of things that mention Fallen of Albaz, between the fusions, between some of the monsters like the new Tri-Brigades and the other stuff from the Albaz structure deck, and new cards that are still coming out, including the card we literally just talked about, the Bystial Aluber. So there are plenty of different targets for this, and being able to revive your Albaz or anything that mentions it does give you access to all kinds of plays. This, again, can help you to set up for the Synchro. It can help you to set up for different fusions. It gives you a lot of different practical uses, while also allowing you to, mill, set up the graveyard. You can send Albion the Shrouded Dragon, perhaps. One of the things about this card I just find really neat is it doesn't have any extra deck restrictions, but I also wish that it gave you the option to send a card from the extra deck when it was summoned, almost like an Nadir Servant, but without the search. Maybe that would have been too good, though. I'm not sure, because obviously being a Despia and a Dogmatica and sort of having all of that going for it is already giving this card a lot. People are intrigued by it. I'm sure it will end up being a secret rare because every copy of Ecclesia has been higher rarity at this point. Whether or not it's going to be super good, it remains to be seen, but I know people have already hopped on that hype train, starting to pick up cards to go with all this new branded support, and I don't even know if this is the end of it or if there's going to be more. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But Guiding Quem the Virtuous, definitely a really good card to keep your eye on, and I think it's going to give Albaz / Despia a boost, but it also could give Dogmatica variants a boost as well. Hopefully you didn't think Spright would be forgotten in all of this lore, because we are getting another card that directly supports that deck in its own way with Fallen of Argyros, or Argyros. Basically, this card is like Spright and that Therion spell, the Argyos system. All the lore is tied in together. I don't know. I haven't been able to follow it to that extent. But it is a Dark Level 2 Thunder that says if a level, rank, or link 2 monster is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand to either field. You can only special summon Fallen of Argyos once per turn this way. Neither player can activate the effects of link monsters that point to this card. During your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one Xyz monster on the field, detach up to 2 materials from it. Now, it's not a Spright in name, so whether or not Spright's going to opt to play this over certain other things remains to be seen, but it's still a free summon, and it does have that interesting effect that you can special it to the opponent's field. Now, maybe in like a mirror match or something where the opponent is using a link-heavy strategy, if you special summon this to their field to a zone a link monster points to, basically they're then locked out of being able to use that link monster's effect. Of course, the downside is that they could just link away with this into something else, and perhaps you're just giving them the ability to ladder up, and I guess it would really depend on which deck they're playing and which matchup they're playing, but it's certainly interesting. And then during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one Xyz monster on the field, detach up to 2 materials from it. Where was this card back in Dino Rabbit format? Imagine having an out to things like Logia and Dulka to get the materials off. I'm half joking, but I just sort of remember the tragedy that was that format if you played anything that wasn't Macro Rabbit or Inzektor. But Fallen of Argyos seems like a neat card, and it's certainly cool from a lore perspective. I don't think it directly gives Spright any massive advantage that would bump it up to be like the #1 spot, but it's certainly something the deck will likely consider. And in a link-heavy metagame, having the option to disrupt your opponent's link plays, but also act as an extender in its own right, does make it worth considering. So, is it cool? Yeah. It's actually really cool to see Spright kind of like come together in a giant suit of armor, but will it see play, and will it be relevant? I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Alright, next up, we've got Icejade Agarine Ron. So everyone is getting a card at this point from this archetype and sort of combined lore, and that's what makes me think we may be nearing the end of this storyline. But like I said before, I do not know that for certain, so maybe it's just expanding into another arc. This is a level 7 Water Aqua Tuner that says you can discard one other Icejade card or one Water Monster. Special summon this card from your hand, then you can special summon one Icejade token. Well, that token is in the monster zone. The player who summoned it cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except water monsters. You can only use this effect once per turn. This card's name becomes Icejade C-Note Enneon Cradle while it is equipped with an equip card. So first things first, that discard effect is really solid. It is really, really cool from a Mermail perspective. Now, I know that deck hasn't been relevant in many years, but it is a free level 7 extender you can special by discarding a water monster that would then not only trigger an effect, but also give you the token. Now, thank gosh Needle Fiber is banned, Halky-Fibrax, whatever you want to call it, because this card would be a 1-card Halk just on its own, because it is a tuner, and then the token that it summons, of course, you could link away. You're only locked into water monsters. But with Halk being banned, it's significantly less powerful, while still very interesting. I don't think Icejade is exactly the top of competitive viability, but it's certainly got some things going for it as a concept, and this card, combined with a lot of water monsters that trigger off of discarding or wanting to be engraved, seems neat on the surface. I'm actually kind of excited to see what people come up with this card, because I think it's possible we could see some unique strategy integration. Now, the second part of the effect, of course, says Icejade C-Note Enneon Cradle. I've gone ahead and popped that card up on the screen here for you. I actually wasn't even familiar what the card was until about 10 seconds ago, but the name of the card becomes that, which means it would combo well with things like Icejade Cosmochlor, which is, of course, a level 10 monster that can special summon itself from the hand if there's a card in the field zone, but it also stops the opponent from activating monster effects except during the turn they're summoned if you control the Cradle. So if there's a way to make this card into the Cradle and then summon Cosmochlor, perhaps you can screw with your opponents in some way. Just a neat interaction I thought was worth noticing. Icejade Aggron Run is actually the most intriguing of the cards I've looked at so far for me personally, because like I said, I think there's a lot of interesting combo potential, but I don't know if it's going to do anything for Icejade specifically outside of have some really cool artwork and probably be a $2 to $3 secret rare that takes up a slot of something slightly better in a core set down the road. Alright, for the next one, Fusion Reproduction. While it is technically not an Albaz card, it is not going to be its own video. That would probably perform terribly, so we're going to throw it in here because there is plenty of Fusion things to cover as it pertains to the Albaz topic. I do think this card is actually pretty neat, though. It is a normal trap, and it says target one polymerization, normal or quick play spell, or one fusion normal or quick play spell in either graveyard. Banish it, and if you do, apply that spell's effect when that card is activated. You can only activate one fusion reproduction per turn. So they went ahead and banned Verte, and then they gave us a drastically watered down Verte that's immensely slower and only uses the graveyard. But still, being able to banish, and especially in mirror matches or in formats where Super Poly is very heavily played, having the option to do that is certainly neat. I do worry that because it's a trap and it can't be activated from the hand, it's going to be basically outclassed right off the bat in the current format, and it's just going to be looked at as something that's kind of like, eh. But, I mean, think about a card like this even a couple of years ago, especially in fusion-heavy formats like Shadal, and even if Branded were to become significant again, being able to replicate an opponent's Branded fusion in a mirror match, while also having options of things like, Super Poly. It's neat, and, it does allow you to maybe reuse some of those things. If you play a fusion spell on the turn and then you apply this spell's effects, you're technically not activating a second copy of that card, so you can maybe get around those hard once per turn restrictions when they apply. I do like this on paper, and it's really, really interesting. I just don't think it's going to succeed all that much because of its being a trap and being relatively slow. This is one to keep an eye on, though. I wonder if it'll end up being just pack filler as a common, or if they'll maybe bump it up to like super or ultra, like they've done with some other generic fusion supports in the past, and it'll maybe catch on at a future date. And finally for this video, we've got Branded Etude. This is a continuous trap that says during either player's turn, you can immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon using monsters you control as material, including a dragon monster. You can only use this effect once per turn. While you control a Bystial monster, any monster sent to your opponent's graveyard for a ritual, fusion, link, or synchro summon is banished instead. Now, it's a trap, so like I said about fusion reproduction, it is technically going to be a bit slower, but it's also really interesting because it's basically a one-sided macrocosmos that isn't all that hard to pull off. The quick synchro effect doesn't strike me as something that would be like game-breaking in any capacity or even really advantageous for the most part. I know there are a lot of tuners, so perhaps there's something I'm missing, being able to pull off a quick synchro during the opponent's turn with this, but it doesn't strike me right off the bat as something crazy. The second effect, though, this is a searchable card because everything Branded is searchable by a million things, and given how easy it is to get Bystials out on the field, perhaps there is something to this, especially in formats like Tier Elements where everything is graveyard reliant. Being able to banish stuff and having an alternative option that's also searchable could be neat. What do you guys think about this? I'm curious, people that have played with the deck a little bit more. Do you think there's a place for this? Do you think it's maybe just not necessary? I'd be interested to hear from some people who have actually played Branded and sort of your thoughts on the card, because it does strike me on paper as a sleeper hit that may be better than it seems right off the bat, but I could also be giving it too much credit just reading the on-paper effect and not actually taking into consideration its application. That's going to do it for today's video. I'm trying to get caught up on a lot of these cards and cover them for you guys while also working on a secret project that I'm very excited to announce starting soon. If you haven't done so already, you can find me on social media here. The different links are there, as well as in the description down below. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and check back for more videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.